Brightburn was directed by David Yarovesky, who directed The Hive, written by Mark and Brian Gunn, who directed Journey to the Mysterious Island, and tells the story of Tori, played by Elizabeth Banks from Slither and Power Rangers the Reboot, and her husband Kyle, played by David Denham, who was also in the Power Rangers reboot and a bunch of other movies. They are a couple, they're trying to have a kid, and one night a miracle happens. Something falls from the sky. It's an alien spaceship with a little boy. Clearly he is not of this world. He is an alien, but they see it as a sign, especially Tori, and she wants to raise the kid as their very own. They name him Brandon. Things advance and everything, like as far as time, everything seems to be going good. We get the present day. He's a 13-year-old boy, played by Jackson A. Dunn, in the most fleshed out character in the entire movie. And from there, he suddenly is discovering that he is not of this world, and that a lot of shit does tend to go down. If you've seen the trailer, it is a horror superhero movie. And it kind of turns the whole thing of like, okay, what would you do if you got these powers? If you discovered you had superpowers, you could fly, you could use heat vision, you could, you had super strength, that kind of stuff. Nothing could hurt you. What would you do? Would you use them for good, or would you use them for evil? And I kind of like what this movie did. Now, I will say that this movie could have used a little more fleshing out. It was 90 minutes, but with a lot of stock characters. It had a lot of good with it. I will say that much. I will get into spoilers a little bit later. I'll do something like this when I'm going to do spoilers. But with this, the cast was very one note. It was very stock characters. You had the funny, the aunt and the uncle and stuff like that. It was a very small town. It was in rural Kansas. It's on a farm and everything. So it's pretty much like Superman's origin story. Except it's not, because the Bryars, and Brandon Breyer, it comes back into play with the symbol that is used in the movie. And I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you can know that like that whole thing of like the trailer where it's like down and then there's bees on either side. Short for Brandon Breyer or Brightburn. I mean, whatever you really want to go with. It's left open to interpretation, even though really not. It's a very simple story that if it was just a generic superhero movie, it would have been straight to Netflix. And honest to God, this movie could have been straight to Netflix and you probably wouldn't have missed much. But it was a fun movie. It did have its moments. It had it had some cool deaths in it. It did have some cool dread, some cool atmospheric shots. Yes, there were some jump scares and stuff like that, but you're gonna get that with any movie that isn't, say high production and stuff like that. This was decent production. It did remind me a lot of Chronicle, which was a found footage superhero movie about 3 guys that end up getting infused with superpowers after coming into contact with an alien rock, alien meteor, alien object, spaceship, whatever. And one uses powers for good, the other doesn't. And then you got the other one caught in the middle. The whole point of this is, it just deals with choice. What would you do if you found out about this? If you found out your life was a lie, you found out you had these superpowers, what would you do? And in this one, yes, you get the typical generic origin story, stuff like that. Oh, things start to unravel, and then it becomes very obvious that Brandon Jackson A. Dunn, again, I cannot put over, just how good he actually was in this. For how one note a lot of these characters were, he was the most fleshed out. I think he's got a bright future, and none of the actors were particularly bad. It was just the characters. But this also is mainly just about the story, the simple story of telling, how an alien being coming down to Earth, well, you need to treat him right, or otherwise shit's going to go south. And then you get the arguments between Tori and Kyle. One wants to defend the kid, the other realizes, well, this shit is going down. And from there, you have a horror movie. And one that you kind of have seen before. It has some good skill to it. I'm not necessarily familiar with... I remember seeing The Hive once. I wonder what the director could do with maybe some more material and a bit of a bigger budget. And maybe if he'd been given a chance to flesh this one out. Because this had potential to be a really good movie. It was just, in the end, a decent to good movie. That doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. So I am going to get into... So I would say see it, but I am going to get into spoilers right here. So If you have anything to, if you don't want to hear any spoilers, so 3, 2, 1, go. Basically, from the very beginning, it is very obvious that Brandon knows he's special. Once he hits the age of 12, 13, he starts hearing weird voices and stuff like that, hearing things commanding him to take over the world. What the hell is going on? He tries to get into the barn. He's told not to go into the barn. He gets into the barn at night. Gee, wonder what's in the barn behind this locked door. It's the spaceship. And what's amazing about this movie is, while it's simple, it does build up the dread pretty well. It doesn't do just, a good versus evil thing, or, oh, good's going to win over evil, or evil's going to win over good. It really tells some stuff where it's like, once things go down, you're pretty much fucked. And that is one thing I did like about this movie. It had some really good atmospheric shots. I love the kills in it. Once things really got going and Brandon discovered his superpowers and discovered that he was an alien being and that he really was special and that they weren't his parents and that he was lied to, okay, things naturally start to go pretty south. There's a girl that he likes in school, and, she, was like, oh, don't worry, it's at one point because he referenced about bees and wasps and stuff like that. And she says, don't worry, smart guys always get the girls. And then later he has a conversation on a hunting trip with his dad about the birds and the bees, about, sex. And, okay, because he's an alien being, he doesn't actually know how to interact with humans all that well, though he's been living as a human for a while. He, ends up peeping in on this girl. Well, because he discovers he has powers, he can fly, he can do all this stuff, things start to kind of go south after that. Earlier, he discovers his powers by throwing a freaking lawnmower when he gets frustrated about 200 yards, and then sticking his hand in there to stop the blade. So, back to the whole thing with the girl. That doesn't end up going all that well. There's a trust exercise thing where they're being shoved in a circle, like, oh, everybody's got to catch. She doesn't catch, he falls down. And then because he was betrayed, he gets mad. He ends up, she ends up grabbing his hand to help him up at the behest of the coach, the gym teacher, and he breaks her hand, basically, because he doesn't know his own strength. But also, oh yeah, he's fucking evil. And it takes so many people so long to discover this. And that's my only issue with it. It's the amount of stupidity with the people here. Now, this movie did remind me a lot of The Prodigy, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying The Prodigy was absolute shit. Brightburn was pretty good. It wasn't great. It had its moments, but it wasn't great. But it certainly wasn't shit. From there, you do have the pretty cool deaths and stuff like that. He tries to apologize to the girl. She mentions, oh, your mother, or my mother can't, doesn't want me to talk to you. And then you see in the trailer, where the freezer door gets ripped off and he attacks the woman. The deaths are pretty cool in this. There's one violent part where a woman gets glass stuck in her eye. That's pretty freaking visceral. And you have this, shot of, it's like blood on one side, but vision on the other side, so you gotta do something like this. There are another few cool deaths. When one guy gets his jaw broken, the sheriff just gets freaking ran into the fence and just absolutely shattered. But with this movie, it does show you that in the end, evil can win. And that's kind of the thing that I really did enjoy about this. There are people who are going to say, oh, well, you hated The Prodigy because the evil won. No, I hated The Prodigy because The Prodigy was shit. With this, I liked it because it showed that once things go south and once people, realize, oh, holy shit, we shouldn't be pissing off this, person or this alien being with all these powers. It kind of almost reminded me a bit of a long Twilight Zone episode with a few more special effects. So the more I think about it, the more I did like it. Yes, again, it was painfully generic with the characters, the story. It's very simple. There isn't a lot of complexity to it. But with this, telling the horror, a horror version of a superhero movie and not a horrifying superhero movie like Catwoman, that's a pretty good, concept. And I will say, I'm interested to see what they're going to do. They seem like they're setting up for a sequel just with the way things are going. So I'll be interested to see if they do a sequel and if they make Brightburn 2 Electric Boogaloo pretty good. So we'll see what happens. I will say not everything was great, not everything worked, but in the end, I'll say B minus. I'll say B minus. I was gonna say B, but it was good for what it was. B minus. I can go there. And there's a poll above my head. Please let me know what you guys think. But like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm Jar Mitlin. I will see you soon.